Today for Fiction Friday, we're reading Chapter 6 in our ongoing book, Pep, the Story of a Brave Dog by Clarence. When we last left our beloved Pep, he had found his injured master in the forest, and he did his best to nurse him back to health by bringing him canteens of water from the nearby stream. But his master knew he was a lost cause without proper help, so he sent Pep away in hopes that Pep might find someone to assist him. But Pep didn't understand all that, just that he was being sent away by the master he worked so hard to find, so he was very sad. Now we'll see just what happens when Pep leaves his master's side. Will he find help along the road? Will he make it back to the hospital? Will he survive the dangers of the war itself? Let's find out. As always, you can find the link in the description below to our story if you want to read along with me. Let's begin. Chapter 6, The Rescue. As Pep trotted away into the shell-raked woods, he was probably the most heartbroken dog that ever slunk away to do his master's bidding. He had traveled so far to find his beloved master. His feet had been sore and his tongue parched with the long journey, and he had watched so faithfully by the doctor's side all through the long night. And now his master had sent him away. He knew that his master needed him also, for he was so weak he could not even bring his canteen with water or hold up his head to drink. The blow on his shoulder had been a very light one, but it had wounded Pep more than any blow he had ever received before. Why did his master send him away? He had been a faithful dog. What should he do? Where should he go? He was not quite sure of the way back to the hospital. The woods were full of frightful sounds, full of lightning and thunder, the kind that tore limbs from great trees, stripped the leaves from their branches, and plowed holes in the ground, holes so deep that if he ever fell into one of them, he might not be able to get out again. For several seconds he stood whimpering under a bush, uncertain. But his terrier, fighting blood, soon asserted itself, and he began picking his way slowly forward in the direction which he thought would take him back to the road that led to the hospital. For 15 minutes he went forward, managing by his clever dog instinct to keep going in the same direction, where a human being might have gone round and round in a circle. Then something happened that quite changed his course. It came so suddenly that he did not know where it came from. He only realized in a dim way that it was part of this terrible night, more of the frightfulness that was all about him. Only this time it nearly got him. Suddenly, and without any warning, there was a bright flash of light over among the bushes. The air was filled with broken limbs and flying leaves and dust, and hundreds of small missiles. And one of these, which was really a fragment of shrapnel, caught Pep in his hind leg, and left that member limp and broken, as useless as a stick. He was so stunned and shaken, and the breath was so knocked out of him that he lay still for several minutes. But finally he dragged himself up on 3 legs and tried to discover what had happened to him and where he was. There was a tangle of brush about him that it was difficult to extricate himself, but finally he dug his way out. Then it was that he discovered the accident to his leg. It pained him frightfully, and the blow had partially paralyzed his back, so it was many minutes before he could even drag himself forward, a few feet at a time. Soon his tongue came out, and he was panting and lolling as though it had been noonday in summer instead of the cool of the morning. It was now so hard to travel that he did not think he could even reach the smooth road, for he had to lie down and rest every few rods. Once he found a cool, green spot under a great tree where war had not devastated nature. Here he lay for half an hour, resting, and then, feeling better, he went forward faster. He had come almost to the edge of the woods when he heard men's voices. He listened eagerly. Perhaps they were friends. If they were, he would go to them. Soon he made out the voices plainly. They were not far away, so he crept forward eagerly. At last he made them out. They were friends. They wore uniforms like the men at the hospital. He wagged his tail frantically and crept still closer. He would make sure. There were so many things to be afraid of here in this strange land to which he and his master had come. Presently the men came so close that he could see them plainly. They were talking in low voices. They were two Red Cross men carrying a wounded soldier on a litter. He was very sure they were good men, for their dress was just like that of the men who unloaded the ambulances at the hospital. With a glad yelp, Pep limped forward. He felt very sure they would be good to him. The Red Cross men had often petted him at the hospital. The men were so busy with the wounded soldier that they did not notice him until he rubbed against the leg of one of them. That made the man stop and cry out. His companion laughed. "He won't hurt you, Bill," he heard the other man say. "He is just a poor wounded bull terrier. He came in out of the bush." The two men laid down the stretcher to rest, and one of them called Pep to him. "Poor Perp," he said. "You have it in your hind leg. War is hell, all right, old boy?" Pep assented and licked the man's hand. There was something he wanted the man to do. He could not think what it was, but the man's next word reminded him. "Where's your master, old sport? You are lost. Whose dog are you, Perp, anyhow?" It was not so much the words as the way the man said them, and the way he rubbed Pep's muzzle that really reminded him of his master, wounded and weak, away off in the terrible woods. Pep whimpered and sniffed, and the man who loved dogs saw that he had struck a sympathetic chord. "What's your name, Perp? You look like a good fightin' English bull terrier, all right. You are a thoroughbred, or I ain't no judge of dogs." Pep whimpered again and turned and licked his flank. "Yes, I see you are hit. So is this poor devil in this air stretcher. Come, Bill, we must get him out of this." Together they took up the stretcher and started forward. Pep was frantic. He caught at the man's pant leg and pulled backward. They must not leave his master in the woods. They must go for him, too. The man kicked at him. "What's the cur want, Bill?" he growled. "I guess you don't know what he does want. He is lonesome and hurt and afraid, and sick of the whole darn war, just like you and me." When they stopped to rest again, Pep went up to the friendly man and nuzzled his hand and licked it. He then turned and trotted a few rods back and stopped and looked back at them, whimpering and whining for them to follow. "What do you make of him, Bill, anyway?" asked the surly man. "By guns," said Bill, springing up. "I have it. He wants us to follow him. He has found someone off yonder who is wounded, and he wants us to go with him. Perhaps it is his master." Pep barked and wagged his tail. When the man got up to follow him, he was delighted. "See here, Bill, you can't just leave this here one. We have to get him out of it first." But luck was with Pep, for another Red Cross man came along and took Bill's place at the stretcher, and his new friend was free to follow him. "Now, Perp," said Bill comfortingly, "you just lead the way, and if there is anything in this here woods you want me to know about, I'm your man." Pep went forward eagerly, absolutely sure of the way. He no longer thought of his broken leg or the terrors of the woods. He was bringing aid to his master. 20 minutes later, he led the way into the ravine, and there they found the doctor. He was lying very still, with one hand across his face. The Red Cross man thought he was dead, but Pep smelled the beloved hand and saw that it was warm. The Red Cross man felt for the pulse. It was fairly strong. "All right, old Perp," he said in a whisper. "He's still alive. Perhaps we'll save him yet. You just watch here, and I will go after another hand and a stretcher." So for the second time that night, Pep took up his vigil by his master's side on the edge of the Argonne forest. It greatly worried Pep to have his master lie so still. He covered his hand with dog kisses and nuzzled his hand, but the hand would not move. He seized the canteen in his mouth, hoping that the doctor would throw it, that he might bring it to him, as he had done earlier in the night, but his master made no sign. So finally the faithful dog lay down to watch. He felt sure that the good man would come back. Something in his voice had reassured Pep. At last, after about half an hour, he heard footsteps, and soon to his great delight, two men appeared with an empty stretcher. Silently they laid the wounded physician on the stretcher, then lifted their burden and began slowly carrying it through the thick woods. Pep limped after them, overjoyed that help had come at last. For half an hour they crept forward, often stopping to rest. At such times Pep would crowd up close and put a kiss on his master's cheek. Now that the responsibility had been partly taken from him, Pep noticed his own wound more and more. His broken leg was swelling badly, and once when he caught it in the underbrush, it made him yelp with pain. Finally, when they had been traveling slowly for about an hour, he sank down with a doleful howl and could go no further. "What's the matter with the dog, Bill?" said the man ahead. "He seems to have gone limp." "I guess he's all in," returned Bill. "Just set this stretcher down, and I will go back for him." So Bill went back for Pep and took him up tenderly in his arms. "What are you going to do with him now that you have rescued him?" asked the other. "He's going in the stretcher," returned Bill decidedly. His companion grumbled and expostulated against carrying a dog, but Bill was determined, and as usual, he had his own way. "Why, if it had not been for him, we would have not found the doctor at all." So it came about that Pep had the honor of riding in a stretcher just like any other wounded soldier, and that with his beloved master. He snuggled down under the man's arm and watched the boughs brush by. He was so tired and exhausted that for once he forgot he was a little soldier on guard and fell asleep and did not awake until they had reached the road. "It's all right, old pup," said his friend Bill. "We've got to the ambulance. You was the last straw that nearly broke our backs. But I am glad we took you. You are well worth saving." Bill took his seat in the ambulance close to Pep's master's head, and the motor began purring, and they were off for the long run to Brest. Bill did what he could for the doctor, wetting his parched lips and forcing brandy between his teeth, and at last, to the delight of both man and dog, they saw the surgeon slowly come to himself. "Where am I?" he whispered. "You are all right, safe and sound here in the ambulance. We will be at the hospital in an hour or two. The dog shows us where you were." The doctor smiled and whispered Pep's name. He drew the dog close to him, and his hand held one of the terrier's ears gently. Thus with a deep sigh of satisfaction, Pep again dozed and did not awake. The doctor smiled and whispered Pep's name. He drew the dog close to him, and his hand held one of the terrier's ears gently. Thus, with a deep sigh of satisfaction, Pep again dozed and did not awake until they had reached their journey's end. What a great chapter that was! Poor Pep started off feeling rebuffed by his master sending him away, but by the end he did exactly what the good doctor hoped he'd do: find help and bring it back to him. Yay, Pep! Such a good boy! He was his master's loyal dog to the end, even when he felt his master wasn't loyal to him. I feel the same kind of love for my daddy and mommy. I want to obey them and do what they want me to do, but I want to be at their side more. I get lonesome and sad all by myself. Even if some alone time is good for me, I don't like it much. I'm grateful that my mommy works from home so I can see her whenever I want. Thanks for hanging out today and enjoying Chapter 6 of Brave Pep's story with me. Be sure to subscribe so you can find me again and join in all the fun. This coming Music Monday, I have a very special and important song planned, so I hope you come back to check it out. Enjoy the weekend, and I'll see you all next week. Bye!